Okay, in this example, we're going to be looking at the sheet revision of fractions. We're not going to do the whole sheet because the video would be so long, so I'm going to try to keep it down to 5 minutes. So this video, we might just look at adding and subtracting unlike fractions, and in subsequent videos, you'll see how to deal with mixed numbers and also multiplication. Okay, so let's have a look at example 13. So first of all, what does it mean by unlike? So unlike just means that we have different denominators. So you can see here we have a denominator of 5 and a denominator of 2. You can't add, well you can, but it's easier to add fractions when the denominator is different. And when I said first of all said you can't do it, well obviously you can because they can be added together, but it's a lot easier if you have the same denominator. And one common error people make is that they add the top numbers and then add the bottom numbers. So I might just do that in red to show you that it's not the case. So this, that means the equal sign, that means does not equal. So we don't add the ones together and we don't add the 5 and the 2 together, okay? So that is wrong. And you've got to remember that because that is a common error that students make. And especially at year 10 when the last time they would have probably seen fractions was back in year 7 and 8. So you're kind of trying to remember your fractions from 2 years ago, over a year ago at least. So let's have a look at how we actually do it. So 5 and 2, we look for the lowest common denominator. You got to think of a number that both 5 and 2 go into. Now, if you're struggling, we can look for a common denominator. It might not be the lowest. So you can always multiply these two numbers together. So 5 times 2 gives you 10. And you can see over here in the explanation, it said the lowest common denominator is 10. But it's not always going to be the case. So you can see in example B, that we've got a denominator of 4 and a denominator of 6, but the lowest common denominator is 12, whereas 4 times 6 is 24. So sometimes it's difficult to find a common multiple. So 5 and 2 go into 10, 4 and 6, you really just got to think, well, what does 6 go into? We got 6, 12, okay, does 4 go into 12? Yes, it does. Therefore, the lowest common denominator is 12. Let's go back to example A first of all. So you can see here the 1/5 has been changed into 2/10. So let's just look at how that was done. Now, I know I want my denominator to be 10. So the 5 changes to a 10. How did I do that? I multiplied it by 2. So whatever I do to the denominator, I also have to do to the numerator or the number on the top. So it becomes a 2. So 1/5 is the same as 2/10. Now the other number, a half, we do the same thing. So we want the denominator to be 10. How did we get that 10? Basically, what did we multiply it by? We multiplied it by 5, and therefore we do the same to the top. Okay, so it becomes 5/10. Now, we do multiplying because things are, when we enlarge things by the same scale, it has to be multiplied. So we don't say, oh, we add 8 to get to 10. Okay, we either multiply or divide. So it's usually multiplying, but sometimes we make fractions smaller. So we've got 2/10 plus 5/10. Your denominator stays the same. Okay, your denominator is like an object. So we're working with tenths. How many tenths do we have in the first one? We've got 2/10. How many do we have in the second one? We've got 5/10. So altogether we've got 7/10. It's like saying I've got 2 apples and 5 apples and I've got 7 apples. Okay, the tenths is like the object. All right, let's look at the second one. All right, I'm going to just clear that because of my working on the screen. And remember, this is a video, so at any time you can pause it. Okay, so we've got 3/4. Now, 4 and 6 both go into 12. So my lowest common denominator, oops, I'm writing, I'm just going to write 24. I had it in my mind. It's 12. Okay, so what do we do to that 4 to get to 12? We multiply it by 3. So whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So 3/4 is 9/12. So you can see that here. Though my circling was not very good, was it? Oops, that's our answer. Let's just go back. 5/6 is your other fraction. Okay, so that is also over 12. What did we do to the 6? We multiplied it by 2. So we do the same to the numerator, which gives that 10. So you can see 9/12 and 10/12. And that gives you, remember, 9/12 plus 10/12. So 9 and 10 gives you 19. So altogether we've got 19/12. Now, this is what we call an improper fraction. Okay, I'm okay with you leaving your answer like that, but just remember that we can also have a mixed number fraction. So to show you how you get this, and I might just clear what we've got on the screen. Okay, so we have 19/12. And that is made up of, okay, 2 parts. First of all, we can get one lot of 12/12. So 19 take away 12 leaves us with 7. So if I was to add them together, I get 19. 12/12 is the same as 1. So when your numerator is the same as your denominator, you have 1. And then because 7/12 is still a fraction, it's 1 7/12. All right, so let's, oops, I might just put my arrow on. All right, so let's go down to the questions. So we're scrolling through all the examples, a lot there, probably a good idea to put them in your bound reference. All right, let's have a look at example 1 first of all. Okay, and you can write this straight onto your sheet. Now, look at your denominators. We've got 2 and we've got 4. Now, you don't have to say, all right, what do they go into? We can do 2 times 4 is 8. Yes, they both go into 8, but that's not your lowest common denominator. 2 actually goes into 4. So I am going to keep that as 4. So our fractions are going to have the denominator of 4. And our second one was already over 4, so I don't need to change it. But you need to ask yourself, well, what do I multiply? I might put this in red. What do I multiply that 2 by to get to 4? I've multiplied it by 2. That means I also have to multiply the top by 2. So 1 times 2 gives you 2. Let's go back to blue to get the answer. So equals, remember your denominator stays the same, so we're adding the top. So that is a 2 and a 1 gives you 3. So 3/4. All right, let's move on to the next one. So we'll do a few together. All right, so 3 and 5. Well, 3 doesn't go into 5, so I can't do that. Now let's say 3 times 5 is 15. Is there another number smaller than that that 3 and 5 go into? There isn't. So we're going to change them both to be over 15. Now, it's good to set up your equation like this because I already know my denominator is 15. So I know part of the fraction. It's the top part that I need to work out. Oops. So in red, what did I do to that 3 to get to 15? Okay, and I might just write it underneath. I multiplied it by 5. So I have to do the same to the top. So 1 times 5 gives you 5. What did I multiply this 5 by to get to 15? I multiply it by 3. So remember, 5 times 3 gives you 15. So 3 times 3 gives you 9. All right, let's just change it back to blue. Okay, and is equal to, and remember your denominator stays the same. I have 5/15 plus 9/15 gives me 14/15. So nearly a whole, but not quite. Okay, now I'm going to get you started. You can pause here if you like and then check your answers. Might be a good idea. All right, now 2 goes into 6, so I am going to have a lowest common denominator of 6. In the second fraction, nothing has to change. What do I multiply the 2 by to get to 6? I multiplied it by 3, so I have to do the same to the top. Okay, so add them together. All right, if you want to pause it at any time, remember you can. 4 and 3. Okay, so I can't think of anything. Let's do 4 times 3 is 12. Is there anything smaller? No. So we're going to have them both over 12. Okay, and I'm not going to go any further with that one. 5 and 4. I can't think of anything other than 5 times 4. So that's going to be over 20 for that one. And then the last one, well, we're working with the same fraction, so it's going to be over 20 again. Okay, so see how you go with that one. All right, so you can pause here, work through those problems if you just looked at the example. Let's go back to subtracting. That was mixed numbers. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll up to see what the one before that was. Adding, mixed. Okay, so we'll just do subtracting because it's very similar to adding, except we're taking away. Okay, so the first example, you can see we already have the same denominator. So the denominator is 9. We don't need to change it, and we like these ones because it's less work. So we're basically saying we have 7 9ths, and I've taken away 2 9ths. So 7 take away 2 leaves me with 5. So I've only got 5 9ths. With example B, you can see the denominators are different. So again, we have to change them, and the same rules apply as they did for addition. Now 6 and 4, you got to think of a number that they go into, and remember we did one similar before. So they both go into 12. So I know the working out is below. We'll just do it here as well. Okay, so what did I multiply? Oh, did you notice I put a plus there? Let's just, oh, we could have just left that. And let's take away. There we go. So what did I multiply that 6 by to get to 12? I multiply it by 2, so I do the same for the top. That's 10/12. The 4 I multiply by 3 to get to 12, so I do the same to the top. Okay, and you can see the working out here. And then I won't bother writing the answer because the answer is here. So I had 7/12, taken away 3/12, and I'm left with 7/12. All right, so let's have a look at some subtraction questions. Let's just clear that as well. It's a bit weird floating on top. Okay, where am I subtracting ones? Okay, where do they start? I think at question 4. Question 4 has similar, they have the same denominator, so I'm not going to bother with that one. Let's start at question 5. Okay, so question 5, remember it's subtraction, so the same as before, we're finding the lowest common denominator. So hopefully you already thought, well, we did a similar one to this before, so the lowest common denominator is 12. What do we do to that 3 to get to 12? We multiply it by 4, so we multiply that 2 by 4 as well, so 8/12. And then what do we do to that 4 to get to 12? We multiply it by 3, so at the top, 1 times 3 gives you 3. I have 8/12, so I've taken away 3/12, and I'm left with 5/12. All right, for each of these, I want you to work with me on the lowest common denominator. So you can pause here if you like to work out the lowest common denominator before we start, but I'm not actually going to do any other working because we did the addition ones, and these are basically the same, we're just subtracting. All right, so question 5b, the lowest common denominator, we've got denominator of 5 and 2. So the lowest common denominator, we multiply them, we get 10, and 10 is actually the lowest, so we can leave that as 10. Question C, we've got 5 and 6. 5 times 6 is 30. Now, 30 is quite a high number, so I'm just thinking in my head, well, is there something smaller? No, there isn't. So 30 is your lowest common denominator. Question D, we have 7 and 4. Okay, so we're getting to numbers that are quite difficult to do, but let's just say, all right, 7 times 4 is 28. If it's too hard, you can actually write down the multiples. So 7, multiples of 7 are easier than the multiples of 4. So 21, and we said 28. Now 4 doesn't actually go into any of these numbers except for 28. Now if you wanted to, and this is how you were probably taught fractions, you write down, and it's taking me a bit of time, you write down the multiples of 4 as well until you get the same one. Okay, the first one. Obviously there's going to be more common multiples. All right, so that's 28. And then lastly, 2 and 3, multiply them together, you get 6. So now that I've given you the lowest common denominator, that's just turning the fraction and putting that lowest common denominator on the bottom and then working out what goes on the numerator. All right, so have a go at those questions, and then once you're finished, have a look at the next video where we're going to be looking at mixed number.